When you reach a certain age, making decisions about the next chapter of your life can feel overwhelming. Many elderly individuals, or those caring for loved ones, face the tough question of whether a nursing home is the right option. At first glance, a nursing home might seem like the safest and easiest choice, a place where there is care, comfort and assistance. It promises peace of mind for families, knowing their loved ones are receiving the care they need. But what happens when you make that choice? When you walk through the doors, hoping for comfort, only to realize that everything you imagined was very different from the reality? This video is not just for those considering a nursing home, but for anyone who might have a loved one in one or who has thought about it for themselves. Over my 82 years, I have learned a lot about life, some lessons the hard way. One of my biggest regrets has been moving into a nursing home. In this video, I will share 6 things I wish I had known before I made that decision. These might surprise you, and I hope they will help anyone who is considering a similar step. Stay with me until the end, because the truth about life in a nursing home is more complex than it might seem, and once you make that move, getting out is not as easy as it seems. Regret. 1. Losing my independence. The biggest shock I experienced after moving into a nursing home wasn't the small room, the scheduled meal times, or even the unfamiliar faces. It was realizing that I had lost control over my own life. Before I moved in, I had complete freedom over my routines. I decided when to wake up, when to eat, and how to spend my day. I could take a walk whenever I wanted, cook my own meals, or simply sit quietly in my favorite chair with a book. But once I entered the nursing home, I quickly realized that my time was no longer my own. Everything ran on a schedule that wasn't mine. Breakfast was at a set time, whether I was hungry or not. Lights out came at a specific hour, even if I wasn't ready for bed. If I wanted to take a walk outside, I often needed permission and had to wait until someone was available to assist me. Simple decisions like what to eat or even what to wear started feeling more like privileges rather than basic freedoms. I remember the first week vividly. I woke up in a bed that didn't feel like mine. I stretched and reached for the book I'd been reading at home, but as I looked around the room, it hit me. This wasn't my home. My books, my favorite chair, the little comforts I had collected over the years were all gone. In their place were sterile walls and a bed I didn't choose. It was a stark reminder that I was no longer in charge of my own life. The hardest part, however, was realizing that once you give up your independence, getting it back is nearly impossible. You adapt because you have to, but in doing so, you start losing yourself. The longer you stay, the harder it becomes to remember what life was like when you had control. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, are you ready to give up the small freedoms that make life truly yours? Because once they're gone, you'll miss them more than you ever imagined. Regret too, feeling forgotten. One of the hardest truths about moving into a nursing home is realizing that the world outside keeps moving without you. When I first arrived, my family reassured me that they would visit often, and for a while they did. My daughter came by once a week, my grandchildren visited on weekends, and it felt like I still had a connection to my old life. But as the months went by, those visits became less frequent. My daughter started calling instead of coming, and my grandchildren became caught up in school and work. Holidays were the hardest. Everyone promised they'd come, but somehow plans always changed at the last minute. And suddenly, I found myself sitting alone in a common room, watching other residents with the same look on their faces, hoping that today might be the day someone would remember them. It wasn't that my family stopped loving me, but life just got in the way. When you're no longer physically present in someone's daily life, it's easy for people to assume you're fine and that you don't need as much attention. But the truth is, the longer you're in a nursing home, the easier it is for people to forget just how much you still need them. I remember one evening sitting in my room, holding my phone and debating whether I should call my son. I didn't want to be a burden, to remind him that I was here, waiting for a visit that might never come. So I put the phone down. And that's when it hit me. This was my life now, watching the days go by, hoping someone would remember to include me. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, are you prepared for the loneliness that comes with it? Because no matter how much your family loves you, once you're out of sight, it's easier than you think to become out of mind. Regret 3. Losing my sense of purpose. When I moved into the nursing home, I thought I was just changing where I lived. What I didn't realize was that I was also changing why I lived. At home, I had responsibilities, routines, hobbies, and a reason to get up in the morning. Even the small things, watering the plants, making my own coffee, tidying up my space, gave me a sense of purpose. But in the nursing home, those daily rituals quickly disappeared. Meals were prepared for me, cleaning was done by someone else, and my plants, they weren't mine to care for anymore. At first I convinced myself it would be nice to relax. No more chores, no more responsibilities, just rest. But after a few weeks I realized something important was missing, a reason to keep going. The days felt long, stretched out with nothing to do but wait. I saw it in the other residents too. People who had once been full of energy now spent their days sitting, staring at nothing, waiting for time to pass. There was George, an 84-year-old man who had been a carpenter all his life. At home, he was always busy fixing things, building little projects in his garage. But here, there were no tools, no projects, nothing for him to create. One day, he looked at me and said, "I feel useless." And I knew exactly what he meant. When you no longer have something to care for, something to work toward, life starts to lose its meaning. The mind slows down, the body follows, and soon you begin to feel like just another resident in a place where time moves, but nothing really changes. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, what gives your life meaning? Because once you move in, finding purpose is not as simple as filling your time. It's about holding on to the things that make you feel alive. Regret 4. Declining health faster than expected. Before I moved into the nursing home, I was doing well for my age. I wasn't running marathons, but I could still take care of myself, go for walks and cook my own meals. I had my little routines that kept me moving, grocery shopping, stretching in the mornings, and even just walking around the house to keep my legs strong. I had a sense of control over my health. But once I moved into the nursing home, everything changed. At first it seemed like a relief. Meals were brought to me and I no longer had to stand in the kitchen to cook. If I needed something, I could just push a button and someone would come to assist me. But what I didn't realize was that the less I did for myself, the weaker I became. I stopped moving as much, and soon my legs felt stiffer. I sat more than I used to, and before I knew it, getting up from a chair started feeling like a chore. The muscles I had worked hard to maintain were disappearing faster than I ever expected. It wasn't just me, I watched it happen to others too. People who had once walked on their own 2 feet suddenly needed wheelchairs. People who had been independent now required help with things they had never struggled with before. The more help we were given, the more we seemed to need. I remember my neighbour, Alice, an 81-year-old woman who'd been lively when she first arrived. She insisted on taking daily walks around the facility, saying she wasn't going to slow down just because of her age. But after a few months, she wasn't walking as much anymore. Then she started using a walker and eventually a wheelchair. One day she looked at me and said, "I don't know when it happened, but I feel like I aged 10 years in just a few months," and that's exactly how it felt. When you stop using your body, you start losing it. In a nursing home, everything is designed to make life easier. But in doing so, it's easy to forget that movement is essential, not just for convenience, but for survival. If I had known how quickly I would lose my strength, I would have fought harder to stay active, to push myself even when I didn't feel like it. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, will you still have the motivation to keep your body strong when everything is set up to make life effortless? Because once you slow down, getting back up isn't as easy as you think. Regret number 5, the loss of privacy and dignity. One of the things I didn't fully consider before moving into a nursing home was just how much privacy I would lose. At home, I had my own space. I could close my bedroom door, sit in silence if I wanted, and do things on my own terms. But in a nursing home, privacy becomes a luxury you don't always get to keep. From the moment I arrived, I felt like I was constantly being watched. Staff were coming in and out, there were scheduled room checks and shared spaces where you're rarely alone. Even simple tasks like getting dressed or using the bathroom often required someone else's help. I knew they were just doing their job, but it's not easy to accept help for things you've done independently your entire life. I remember my first week struggling with the idea that I had to ask for permission to do things I once did without thinking. Want to take a shower? You might have to wait until someone is available to help. Need to use the restroom? Sometimes pressing the call button means waiting longer than you'd like. Even meal choices were limited. If you don't like what's on the menu for the day, well, you have no choice but to eat it. And then there's the issue of roommates. Not everyone gets a private room, and sharing a space with someone you didn't choose can be frustrating. I was lucky to have a kind roommate, but I heard stories from others who weren't so fortunate. Some had roommates who were loud, unclean, or even had cognitive issues that made sleep nearly impossible. No matter how much you try to make your room feel like home, it's never truly yours. The loss of dignity is one of the hardest things to accept. When people knock but don't always wait for an answer before coming in, when you're spoken to like a patient instead of a person, and when your daily routines are dictated by a schedule you didn't create, it changes you. You start to feel less like yourself and more like just another name on a list. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, are you prepared to give up the privacy and control you've had your entire life? Because once it's gone, it's hard to get back. Regret 6. Realizing it's harder to leave than you think. When I first moved into the nursing home, I told myself it would be temporary. I thought I would give it a try, see how things went, and if I didn't like it, I could always leave. But what I didn't realize was just how hard it would be to get out once I was in. At first it seemed simple. If I didn't like it, I would just go back home. But when I tried to imagine that, I realized things weren't the same anymore. My house sat empty, and maintaining it from a distance became difficult. My children had already started making changes, selling things they thought I wouldn't need, even considering renting out the place. When I brought up the idea of returning, they hesitated. "Are you sure you can manage on your own? Wouldn't it be safer to stay? We just want what's best for you." Then there was the issue of my physical decline. After months of living in a place where I didn't have to cook, clean or even walk very far, I wasn't as strong as I used to be. The independence I once had started slipping away, making the idea of moving back home more difficult than I ever imagined. I wasn't as confident in my ability to live alone, and that fear kept me stuck. I met others who had the same experience. They thought they would try the nursing home for just a little while, only to realize that leaving wasn't as easy as they thought. The longer you stay, the harder it becomes to adjust to life outside. For some, their homes were sold and their savings drained by the cost of care, leaving them with no option to return. There was no going back. That's the part nobody tells you. Moving in feels like a decision you can reverse, but for most people, it's not that simple. The nursing home slowly becomes your whole world, and before you know it, the outside life you once knew feels like a distant memory. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, are you prepared for the possibility that once you go in, leaving might not be as simple as you think? Because once you settle in, the barriers to leaving, whether physical, financial or emotional, can be harder to overcome than you ever imagined. Looking back, I don't regret growing older, but I do regret believing that a nursing home was my only option. I walked in expecting comfort, safety, and a better quality of life. What I found instead was a world that slowly took away my independence, my privacy, my purpose, and even my sense of self. Does that mean nursing homes are all bad? Not necessarily. For some people, they genuinely need the level of care they provide. But before you make that decision, think carefully about what you're giving up, because once you move in, life will never be the same. If I could do it over again, I would have fought harder to stay in my own home, explored more ways to get help without giving up my freedom, and made sure I truly needed to be there before making such a permanent move. If you're facing this decision, I hope you take the time to ask yourself, is this truly what's best for me, or is it just what seems easiest right now? Because the life you have today, your routines, your independence, your choices, is worth holding on to for as long as you can. Thank you for joining me today. I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below and share one thing you learned today and how you plan to use it in your life. Your thoughts are important to us, so don't hesitate to share them. Reading your comments gives us great motivation and encouragement. If you found this video helpful, please like, subscribe and share. Your support helps us continue creating content that informs and inspires. Thanks for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.